Once upon a time, in a kingdom nestled amidst rolling hills and verdant forests, there lived a noble king and queen. They longed for a child, and their wish was granted when the queen gave birth to a daughter as fair as snow, with lips as red as blood, and hair as black as ebony. They named her Snow White. Years passed, and the queen fell ill and passed away. The king, devastated by his loss, sought solace in his daughter, who grew into a kind and gentle young woman. However, the king remarried a vain and wicked queen, who possessed a magic mirror that she would consult daily, asking, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" The mirror always replied that the queen was the fairest, until one day, it declared that Snow White, now a young woman, had surpassed her in beauty. Consumed by jealousy, the wicked queen ordered her huntsman to take Snow White into the forest and kill her. Unable to carry out such a heinous deed, the huntsman released Snow White, warning her to flee into the woods and never return. Lost and frightened, Snow White stumbled upon a cottage deep in the forest. Inside, she found everything small but neat and tidy, indicating it was inhabited. Tired and weary, she fell asleep on one of the small beds. The owners of the cottage were 7 dwarfs who worked in the mines nearby. When they returned home, they were surprised to find Snow White asleep in their bed. Upon hearing her story, they welcomed her into their home, moved by her kindness and beauty. Snow White, grateful for their hospitality, took on the role of caring for their home while the dwarfs worked during the day. Meanwhile, the wicked queen, unaware that Snow White was alive, continued to consult her mirror. Learning that Snow White still lived and was the fairest in the land, she concocted a plan to eliminate her rival. Disguising herself as an old peddler woman, the queen visited the cottage where Snow White lived with the dwarfs. She offered Snow White a poisoned apple, claiming it would grant wishes. Despite the dwarfs' warnings, Snow White succumbed to temptation and took a bite of the poisoned apple. The effect was immediate. She fell into a deep, death-like sleep. Heartbroken, the dwarfs placed her in a glass coffin, where she remained as if in eternal slumber. One day, a prince from a neighboring kingdom happened upon the glass coffin while riding through the forest. Struck by Snow White's beauty, he begged the dwarfs to let him take her coffin to his castle. Moved by his sincerity, they agreed. As the prince's servants carried the coffin, they stumbled, dislodging the piece of poisoned apple from Snow White's throat, breaking the curse. Snow White awoke to find herself in a grand castle, surrounded by the prince who had awoken her and his joyful subjects. Overwhelmed with gratitude, she accepted the prince's proposal of marriage. They were wed with great celebration, and Snow White forgave the wicked queen for her past deeds. However, the tale does not end there. The wicked queen, upon learning of Snow White's awakening and marriage to the prince, attended their wedding. But her envy and hatred consumed her so fiercely that she collapsed and died. Her reign of vanity and malice ended, and Snow White and her prince ruled the kingdom with compassion and wisdom, beloved by all who knew them. And so, Snow White's story became a legend, a testament to the power of kindness, resilience, and the enduring magic of true love in overcoming darkness and adversity. After their wedding, Snow White and the prince ruled their kingdom with wisdom and compassion. The dwarfs, who had grown fond of Snow White, visited the castle often, bringing gifts from their mines and sharing in the prosperity of the kingdom. Snow White, now a queen, continued to be beloved by all for her gentle nature and beauty, which seemed to radiate even brighter after her ordeal. As time passed, Snow White and the prince were blessed with children, filling the castle with laughter and joy. The dwarfs became honorary uncles, doting on the royal children and regaling them with stories of their adventures with Snow White in the forest. The kingdom flourished under their rule, known far and wide for its peace and prosperity. Yet, not all was entirely peaceful. The memory of the wicked queen haunted Snow White at times, a reminder of the darkness that had once threatened her happiness. She often wondered what had driven the queen to such extremes of jealousy and hatred. Despite the forgiveness she had extended, Snow White could not shake off the feeling that there was more to the story. One day, while exploring the castle's library, Snow White came across an ancient book that spoke of a powerful sorceress who had once wielded dark magic in the kingdom. Intrigued, Snow White delved deeper into the history of her land, uncovering secrets long buried and forgotten. She learned of a prophecy that foretold the rise of a queen whose beauty would be unmatched, but whose heart would be consumed by envy and pride. The sorceress, it was said, had cursed the queen with an insatiable desire for beauty and power, driving her to commit unspeakable acts in her quest to be the fairest in the land. Snow White realized that the wicked queen had been a victim of this curse, trapped in a cycle of jealousy and despair that had ultimately led to her downfall. Moved by compassion, Snow White sought out the sorceress who still lived in seclusion in the depths of the forest. With the help of the dwarfs and her loyal subjects, Snow White ventured into the heart of the forest, confronting the sorceress who had caused so much pain and suffering. In a heartfelt plea, Snow White asked the sorceress to break the curse that had plagued the kingdom for generations. Touched by Snow White's kindness and bravery, the sorceress agreed to lift the curse, restoring harmony and balance to the land. The dark magic that had clouded the hearts of many began to dissipate, replaced by a renewed sense of hope and unity. With the curse broken, Snow White and her kingdom entered a new era of prosperity and peace. The memory of the wicked queen faded into history, replaced by tales of Snow White's courage and compassion. She became known not only for her beauty, but also for her strength of character and her ability to bring people together. And so, the story of Snow White continued to be told for generations, a timeless tale of love, forgiveness, and the triumph of good over evil. Her legacy endured, inspiring countless others to find beauty not only in appearance, but also in the kindness and goodness that dwells within every heart.